Hello and welcome to our first webinar on planning and implementing leisure and health programs. I'm Anthea and I'm going to be your trainer over this series of 3 webinars. In this session, we're going to discuss gathering and recording detailed information about our clients, assisting with the preparation of an activity plan, and participating in the design of individual programs. We're going to commence this webinar with a discussion on the importance of gathering and recording information about our clients. Why do you think it's important that we gather information about our clients' history and their preferences? Well, we do this to be able to design and implement a personalised activity plan that suits their interests and their needs, whilst doing this in a holistic manner. In order for us to gather the information we need to develop these plans, we need to follow the organisation's policies and procedures in which we are employed. All organisations will have preferred methods and procedures for gathering client information. Let's now look at some common methods. Meeting with the client and/or their representative. This can be a basic conversation between yourself and the client or their representative, in which you can ask specific questions and these can be answered. You could review your client's care plan. By reviewing your client's care plan, you will be able to gather a large amount of information about your client. For example, their history, their preferences, and any hobbies they have. You could also observe your client in an activity session. Observation of clients can give a great deal of information on their abilities. However, it does not leave room for finding out extra information about their preferences or their strengths outside what is actually being observed. And finally, you can complete a leisure and health assessment. By completing one of these assessments with your client, you'll be able to gather a great deal of information. Let's now look in more detail at leisure assessments. A leisure assessment provides the framework to identify the leisure needs of an individual. This can include interests and hobbies, what the person's currently doing, what they might have previously been interested in, and what their interests might be in the future. When combining this information found out by doing a leisure assessment with a review of the person's current level of function, a leisure plan can be developed. Let's now look at some sample leisure assessments. This sample leisure questionnaire is used to gather information about a client's leisure and recreational needs. It includes skill level, support requirements, goal setting, evaluation and modification requirements. Take a moment now to familiarise yourself with this type of leisure questionnaire. The second leisure assessment we're going to look at is a sample leisure assessment. Take a moment to familiarise yourself with this type of leisure assessment. It includes the client's skill level and what their goals are. Let's now briefly recap on what we discussed or was discussed with your trainer in the workshop. In the workshop, you will have discussed identifying activities to match the leisure and health needs of clients or groups with which you are working. We are now going to continue by looking at the preparation of activity plans and the importance of making sure that people are able to participate in the design of the individual programs that are put in place for our clients. Let's now look at the process of planning an activity. Before we start to plan an activity, we need to identify the following. What is the activity? Who's the activity designed for? When is the activity planned for? So things such as the time of day, the day of the week. How much will the activity cost, either to the company or the individual? And do you have the allocated money for the activity? So if a client is paying for the activity, do they have the funds to fund this activity? Or if the organisation is paying for the activity, do they have an allocated budget for this activity? When planning an activity, there are 4 steps that we should follow. Step 1, Arrange staff members to assist in the planning process. Step 2. Get an advisor to assist with the planning process. Step 3. Plan out the activity, including outlining the steps in the plan of the activity. Weed out any bad or unsuitable ideas. Sort out what needs to be done in chronological order. Assign people specific tasks that they can handle. And give deadlines in which these tasks need to be completed. Step 4. Follow through with the process. To help you in the planning of this whole process and make sure it's followed through, it's recommended that you use the following forms: a checklist for the activity, an activity program planning guide that will have everything required. You can make copies of these documents for the whole group that's involved in the planning process. When developing a new activity, or when there's a change to the program, it's important to develop and document the goals for the activity or for the change to the program. Before we can document the goals and objectives, we need to understand more about what goals and objectives are. Goals and outcomes describe the intent of a program and the expected results of the program. Goals are statements about general aims or purposes that are broad and long-range intended outcomes and concepts, whereas objectives are brief and clear statements that describe the desired learning outcome. There are several things that you should consider before implementing a leisure program. You should ensure the environment or the location in which the program is going to take place is safe for both the clients and the staff members or volunteers that will be involved in the program. You should conduct a risk assessment to identify any hazards. Then, once this risk assessment has been completed, implement risk control measures to address any of these identified hazards. Gather appropriate resources and equipment required, and ensure the activity is non-discriminatory. In other words, make sure everyone can be included in the activity, despite their physical or cognitive deficits. Leisure programs and activities don't just happen. They take a considerable amount of planning. The more detail that's contained within the plan, the more likely it is that your program will be successful. The first step to writing a plan is to write a clear statement about the goal or the outcome that you want for your activity. The goal or the outcome is the starting point for a detailed implementation plan. Another important element to consider in your plan is the evaluation process. Evaluation is a process of reviewing the successfulness of an activity, including what went wrong and what could have been done better. The evaluation tool should be developed prior to the implementation of an activity. The implementation stage should be outlined clearly, and the plan should include the following: the exact nature of the activity, the outcomes and the goals of the activity, what needs to be done to prepare for the activity, and who needs to be involved in the whole process. We are now going to look at a sample art program. This program is designed to improve the dexterity of clients with acquired brain injuries. An acquired brain injury, also known as an ABI, refers to any damage to the brain that occurred to an individual after their birth. Common causes of an ABI can include accidents such as a car accident, a stroke, lack of oxygen to the brain, and degenerative neurological disorders and diseases. ABI-related disabilities can affect the cognitive, physical, emotional, and independent functioning of individuals. So let's now look at this sample art activity program for clients with ABIs in more detail. You can see that we've got the process here, the steps involved. For example, check in the resources are available. Then we need to find out and set up the activity room. We need to perform a hazard assessment and a risk assessment. We need to assist clients to the activity room. We need to provide an explanation on the activity and then provide one-on-one assistance with the paintbrushes, clean up after the activity and evaluate. Also included in this sample art program are the goals and outcomes, the tasks we need to prepare, and the individuals and what parts of the program they're responsible for. You can see by having a sample art program like this, it's very clear what an individual leisure and lifestyle staff member needs to do in the process of having this program run smoothly. Let's now talk about activity modifications. An activity modification is changing one or more components of an activity. Why do you think you would need to modify an activity or a program? Well, some of the reasons can include to enable a participant when their skills or their ability is lacking, to modify any discrepancies within the program or the activity, and to achieve a client's individual goals. Whilst you're planning and organising activities, it's important that you meet your duty of care responsibilities. You owe your clients and your work colleagues a duty of care when you're planning and implementing activities and programs. Your duty of care is your legal duty to take reasonable care so that others aren't harmed. And if you identify anything that's likely to cause harm, you must take reasonable care in reducing the risk of harm. We're now going to look at the importance of participating in the design of individual program plans. You may be involved in developing individual programs based on a client's leisure and health needs assessment. There are many types of programs and different approaches to program planning and development. These include activities designed to address the needs of individuals, activities designed to meet needs identified in the assessment process, activities to extend the participation numbers in an existing program, passive or active types of activities, physical, mental and emotional, also social and spiritual activities, and strategies to address barriers to participation to increase participation numbers. Leisure and health programs need to be developed in consultation with other people who are involved in the health and wellbeing of our clients. So where possible, make sure that you allow time to discuss the leisure and health programs with these other members of staff. Members of the interdisciplinary team, such as your client's GP and physiotherapist, can also be involved in this process. Let's now look at an example of a client and also the members of the interdisciplinary team that we can involve in the development of the individualised plan for this client. You have a client who's diabetic. She has leg ulcers on her right lower legs and her diabetes is uncontrolled. She's also overweight, depressed and socially isolated. What members of the allied health team could be involved in this client's individualised plan? Well, we could involve her GP, her dietitian, a diabetes specialist, her physiotherapist, a leg ulcer clinician or nurse, a physiotherapist, and a counsellor. As you can see, setting up a plan to address a person's social needs is as equally complex and detailed as an individual person. By involving all these members of the team, you can come up with a personalised leisure and health plan that would benefit your client's physical, social and emotional well-being. Once you've gathered all the information required from assessments and interviews, it's time to document your individualised plans. Documenting your individual program plan can be time-consuming. However, once you've gathered all your information, you should find it less of a challenge than what it would be if you didn't have all the information at a time you needed it. Let's now look at a typical individual program plan. This plan is for a man named John. It includes John's medical history, his strengths, the areas he wishes to improve, the people who are involved in the plan, and the resources required to make the plan work. Take a moment now to familiarise yourself with this plan before we move on to the second part of John's individualised plan. This second part of John's individualised plan includes John's objectives and goals and proposed activities that John could participate in. Take a moment now to familiarise yourself with the format and the layout of this typical individualised plan. The final topic we're going to talk about today in this session is cultural competence and how cultural competence impacts on the development of leisure programs. Let's start with discussing what cultural competence is. Cultural competence is the capacity for people to increase their knowledge and understanding of cultural differences. It's the ability to acknowledge cultural assumptions and biases. And it's the willingness to make changes in thoughts and behaviours so that we can address these biases. So, with that said, why do you think it's important that leisure and health programs promote cultural competence? Well, a culturally and socially competent program demonstrates empathy and understanding of cultural and social differences in the treatment and plan design, the implementation and the evaluation process. Culturally competent programs are characterised by staff knowledge and sensitivity to the first language of a client or to the client's language of choice. Staff understanding of cultural differences within the client population. Staff backgrounds that may be similar to clients. Methods that reflect the cultural specific values and the needs of the clients, including the client population in the program and decision making, and always making sure that everyone's included and that there's no discrimination. Thank you for your participation in this webinar. Continue now by watching this video on cultural competence and then go on and complete your quiz. Thank you for your time.